Hi, I'm Ellen Perlstein, and I'm assistant professor in the UCLA Getty Conservation Graduate Program, as well as in Information Studies. And one of the classes that I teach every 2 years is Conservation and Ethnography, and it's a class in which the students get to work on objects from an indigenous repository with input by Native people who are extremely interested in the methods of manufacture and the care practices for these collections. And in this case, we worked with the Agua Caliente Cultural Museum, as Suzanne just told you. In order to have a display here in the UCLA Young Research Library, we were confronted with an exhibition case that isn't really designed to museum standards. So what we had to do was we had to figure out a way to seal, for security purposes, what was a very penetrable and insecure case. And we also had to figure out a way to adjust the climate in the case, creating a microclimate, as it were, that was going to be preservative for these collections, or the museum would not have permitted these objects to come to the library. So what you see all along the bottom of the case and the top of the case are trays of a buffering material called silica gel. What we had to do was calculate the volume of the case and the quantity of this material that would be needed to achieve a beneficial humidity. And we then installed it in advance of installing the objects. In fact, we started over a month ago to climatize and seal the case in order to make it appropriate for these collection materials. And there's a cable that's protruding from the case that extends to a data logger that's measuring the temperature, the relative humidity, and the light levels inside the case. And we can come with our computer and interface with that and read out the conditions inside the case. So we waited until we had a stable environment before installing.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Morris. I'm part of the UCLA Getty Conservation Program. And here we have our exhibit from our collaboration with the Agua Caliente Cultural Museum in Palm Springs. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my piece here. It's a skookum doll. And one of the main things that I began doing was to do research on the skookum doll. I was very lucky to find a website that had a lot of information. And then from that information, I was able to do some scientific analysis to prove whether or not my skookum doll was perhaps from the 1920s or the 1930s, even up to the 1960s, they were making these. So basically what I did is I did analysis on the hair and the blanket and also on the dress. And I found out that they were made from mainly cotton, where the fibers and some wool. And then the hair was a mohair and also human hair. And the main thing was that I didn't find any plastic material or any synthetic material, which proved to me that this doll was made before the 1940s. Okay. So that was really great because they wanted to authenticate this doll as a skookum doll. And also the head was made of composition material, which is also an indicator of when this doll would have been made because it would have been replaced by plastic in the 1940s. So I did a minor treatment on the doll. It's really, from what I gathered from talking to collectors, they don't like to have a lot of treatment done to the dolls. So it was just little things. She had some fraying edges from some sewing that had become dislodged. And then the leather headband was flaking, so I stabilized that. And yeah, she looks pretty good.
I'm Jiafang Liang. I'm also a student in conservation program at Getty UCLA. This is Alaska wooden doll. I was worked on last quarter. This object was preserved very well. The thing I worked on it is try to identify the hair used on this wooden doll. I took the sample from the area where I pointed out in my panel, and I used the cross-section, longitudinal section, as well as the scale caster. So from this reference samples as well as the online database. I figured it out. It's from the Martin, which was active in Northern America and also Canadian areas.
Hi, my name is Linda Lin. I am a second year in the UCLA Getty Conservation Program. Last quarter we had the opportunity to work with a collection at the Archaeological Cultural Museum, and this basket is attributed to the Apache tribe, and I had the opportunity to examine and do a simple treatment on the rib. What I find most valuable from this course is we had the opportunity to work with Native elders belonging to the Southern California tribal groups. And the interesting thing is, depending on their cultural background, sometimes they will impart different types of information. For instance, a weaver of Kikuya and Apache background, she kind of mentioned what the symbols meant, or the simple construction techniques. And for instance, this is a type called close coiling. And for this particular exhibit, I also made a didactic label explaining the technology of basket weaving. We also used X-ray radiography to look at the structure of the basket, as well as doing analysis of the plant fibers under optical microscopy.